violence, Catherine Austin Fitz.
Uh-huh.
It's front page news that the CIA is now looking to recruit ex-bankers.
I know. And what's amazing is that the article talks about the top pay scale being, the CIA will offer $160,000. And what a come down it is. I have to tell you, here in Hickory Valley, Tennessee, $160,000 a year is is the equivalent of a gazillionaire. So this is not too painful, and it also makes you wonder who they were working for to begin with.
Well, Warren Buffett called these derivatives weapons of mass financial destruction. So the people who know how to build them and to use them to destabilize markets are bankers. Now that they're being laid off because Goldman Sachs is attacking their own brethren, their own fellow bankers, by getting rid of all the competition. So the CIA, I guess, to compete with Goldman, wants to hire some of those ex-bankers so they can go to war with Goldman. So there's a war between CIA and Goldman brewing.
Well, that I don't know about, but there is, since digital technology took over, the closeness of the relationships between Wall Street and the intelligence agencies just get ever closer, and the use of financial fraud as a tool of economic warfare just keeps growing.
Okay, speaking of financial fraud, in China, it appears that all the stimulus money that they're throwing at their economy is going towards speculation.
I don't know, because I think China's going around the world. I mean, they're on a shopping binge. They're taking their dollars and they're buying up strategic resources all over the world.
Or they're buying up commodities, and they're buying up strategic commodities, and they're buying up copper, but they're also plowing into the Shanghai Stock Exchange in a way that is really, we're seeing, we can deduce that it's more of a speculative gambling environment than less strategic. Okay, yes, of course they want.
Right, but the Chinese have for 2,000 years been that way. I was in Shanghai the day that Deng died in 1997, and everywhere you went, everybody was listening to the radio. They weren't listening to news about the death. They were listening to the opening of the Shanghai stock market. So China, prepare for China having speculative bubbles from here to eternity.
Right. As the whole globe goes to zero interest rate policies, and they can't raise rates because they've backed themselves into a corner, the only thing left is speculation. But let's move for a second to another story that was very interesting last week. On the Italian-Swiss border, 2 Japanese nationals were caught holding $134.5 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. What is this all about?
Well, it's interesting. There are 3 theories on this. One is the paper is real. I've written a lot about all the money that disappeared from the federal government over the last 15 years. And you can't have that kind of missing money, Max, without tremendous amount of things like Treasury securities issued off balance sheet. So, theoretically, it's possible that they're real. What's interesting is even if they're counterfeit, it's still a deeply disturbing story because you've got an amount of securities that would make them, theoretically the 4th largest creditor of the United States in the world. What does it say about the dollar that counterfeiters would operate with those kinds of denominations in that amount? It's kind of as bad news for the dollar if it's counterfeit as it's real. And finally, another third hypothesis about this is it's kind of a staged hit to create bad news about the dollar, but it says the same thing. It's almost as though it's gotten so big and so weird, whatever the truth is, that it's bad news for the dollar.
Well, if in fact you're going to a zero interest rate policy around the world, and if in fact in the U.S. they're throwing tens of trillions of dollars into this black hole of debt coming from a source that they refuse to have any accountability for, isn't it a fair statement, Catherine Austin Fitz, to say every single bond issued by the U.S. government at this point is counterfeit?
It's economically counterfeit. The question is it legally counterfeit? And that's relevant because if they're not legally counterfeit, if they're legally affirmed, then ultimately creditors, as a matter of state, have the right to demand our water, land, and resources. I often say to people in the United States, you think you own your home, but you may not.
Right. Well, in fact, if they are engaging in what's called naked short selling, these primary government bond dealers, and they're selling Treasury bonds that don't actually exist, then that is outright blatant counterfeiting. And we've seen naked short selling in other areas of the market. I think you cover naked short selling to some degree. It's becoming more of an issue. This is just issuing stocks and securities that don't exist. If in fact That's counterfeiting. Basic naked short selling is the same as counterfeiting, and why not? Why not in the U.S. Treasury bond market? Why not? Nobody's stopping them. There's no regulatory authorities. There's nobody watching the store.
I think the big problem we're looking at, I mean, we're coming into a period, August, September, October, where we have huge deficit financing. The primary dealers have to push out, huge amounts of Treasury paper, and I'm not sure that they can keep that up given the probable counterfeit and securities fraud in the Treasury market and the collateral fraud in the mortgage market. And that's why I think rumors of bank holidays need to be not completely dismissed, because the danger is you've got a highly centralized system. It's unbelievably fragile, and it's being asked to pound out a couple more $1 trillion of paper, and it can't do that, Max, without war. I mean, you've got to hold real guns to serious people's head to get them to buy more at this volume, given the fragility of the system.
Thank you, Catherine Austin-Fitts. That's all the time we have for today on The Edge. And thanks again to Stacey Herbert. We'll be back next week with another edition of On the Edge. Until then, bye, y'all.